ESPN 1420, ESPN1420.com. Welcome back in to the Great Scott Show, the Great Sports Callers Open Think Tank on this Tuesday, as promised. Joining me right now, ESPN SportsCenter anchor, radio personality, former WWE personality, and Raw General Manager, Jonathan Coachman. Coach, what is up?
Well, I got to tell you, first of all, because I know a lot of your listeners out there were preparing for this today. And I got to be honest with you, Scott, I would be looking forward to it as well. But when I'm trying to mess with somebody on Twitter and then you don't back me up on that, then that's an issue for me. That's an issue for me. You got to understand where I came from, what I did for 10 years, and there's nothing I like more than rattling somebody's cage a little bit. So I'm going to let it go for the sake of this interview, but next time, just go with me.
You know what, Coach? I will never break kayfabe again on Twitter.
My goodness.
Deal?
That was really embarrassing on your part. It's okay. Like I said, I'm going to let it go.
You know, look, I could sit here and make excuses and tell you that I hadn't slept and my 10-week-old was crying all day and my wife and I were, debating something, and then I suddenly look at Twitter and this guy's like, wait, you're not going on a show, and you know what? But that would just be an excuse. I will make no excuses. I will never break Twitter on.
Baby's always an excuse.
By the way, how are your two kids doing?
They're great. They're actually doing 2 weeks of camp. So the kids are fantastic.
Awesome, man. Awesome
so far.
Well, it's been a little over a year since you come on this show, and basically you came on the program to explain what you meant when you said about Lafayette, quote, in this town, and I've been there, there's not very much there. Now, to your credit, you came on the airwaves, you explained the entire thing, why your quote was taken out of context, and, your appreciation for the Cajuns and all that stuff. Now, having said that, has anyone from down here given you any grief about it in the last year, or was it all kind of put to bed after coming on the show?
For the most part, I mean, the first, 48 hours were very, very emotional from your guys' end of it, not particularly from mine. But I understood it. But there has been the occasion in the last 12 months or so where we will be showing a Louisiana Lafayette highlight, whether it's baseball, basketball, or softball or something, and I will just make a little jab about how much the people in your neck of the woods love me so much, and somebody will remember, and they'll come back at me on Twitter or email or something. But all the venom has pretty much dissipated. And I think there's nothing but good-natured ribbing going on back and forth, at least from my end of it.
No doubt about it.
I think we're good. And for people who don't know, all I said was, or meant, was there's nothing as far as a professional existence in Lafayette, so that's why there's so much backing of your college teams. It was actually giving a compliment, and I think people took it as an insult.
It was. There's not a professional sports team there. These folks love their Cajuns. I've been down there, and a lot. Look, if anybody wants to hear it, I mean, you can go to our YouTube page. The interview from 14 months ago is up there. I didn't mean for you to rehash it all again, but the way I saw it was after you came on. I mean, the folks said, all right, Coach is all right with us. He's pretty much an honorary Cajun now. So at some point, you got to bring the kids down here. We got to give you a key to the city and give you guys some boiled crawfish, do the whole thing.
Hey, I would love it. I every time I've been to Lafayette, I've had a great time. We've had very good food. It's just, when you've got kids, and you're going to learn this now that you've got a little one, when you take a vacation, it's got to be for a purpose. And when your family all lives in Kansas, and you tell them, hey, I'm taking a vacation to Louisiana, Grandma and Grandpa don't understand that.
Grandma and Grandpa probably love it anytime they get to see the kids.
Taking their grandkids, not through them.
Yeah, I understand.
You'll get that. It's okay.
Jonathan Coachman, our guest, ESPN1420.com. Coach, I know Colin Cowherd announced that he'll be leaving ESPN Radio, and you've done a lot of hosting. Used to have coaching company. You filled in quite a bit. A lot of folks here heard you on the Russillo show week before last. First of all, if they ever find a permanent time slot for you on ESPN Radio, we got to send you a Raging Cajuns helmet. You got to put it up, on the desk. But do you have some interest in potentially, if they came to you with that? I mean, is is radio something you'd want to do more, or are you kind of happy? You know, it seems like, at least from my perspective, you got your hands in a lot of the different cookie jars up there in Bristol.
Well, I'm, the bottom line is a lot of things have changed the last 18 months or so at ESPN, and for me, in a good way. And I had, the unique opportunity a couple of years ago to have my own show from 4 to 7, which on the national level, for people who don't know, it's not the greatest time slot because you're covered up in a lot of big markets by local shows. Because if you're in Lafayette, you want to listen to me talk about the Lakers, or you want to have somebody talk about the Cajuns. Well, that's the same whether you're in Boston, New York, LA, whatever the case might be. So I had that time slot for a little less than a year. Very, very daunting to have a 3-hour talk show 5 days a week, and especially when you're not on in a lot of big markets. So I learned what it was like. I learned what I would do differently. And to be honest with you, TV is my bread and butter. It's what I love. I love radio. But TV just is easier for me. And for me, it's higher profile to do SportsCenter than it would be for me to take Colin Cowherd's spot or team up with Ryan Russillo if that was the case. I've enjoyed doing radio, but as we start going along, I like working at night. It's better for my home life, and I like doing highlights. I mean, that's what I signed up to do. In my head when I was in college, and I dreamed about doing SportsCenter, and it's still the number one brand in all of sports. And for me to get to do SportsCenter 4 days a week, I think it would take a really special opportunity for me to leave that and leave what they've given me in the last 12 months or so. So I don't think that's going to be happening. But never say never. But I just seriously doubt I would leave SportsCenter at night to do a daytime talk show. In
the meantime, we'll look forward to hearing you fill in from time to time. And in listening to you last week on the Russillo Show, covering the Open quite a bit, all eyes were on 21-year-old Jordan Spieth up until the playoff. But you spent a lot of time on Spieth. What can he do for the sport of golf, in your opinion?
I think he can do more than what some people are giving him credit for. I think what we get lost in with the Tiger Woods phenomenon, and I'm the biggest Tiger Woods fan there is in this universe, is that he created an aura and an ability to pull the spectacular out when he needed to, and we all said we'll never see that again. So I've heard a lot of critics about Jordan Spieth say, he can't be Tiger. There'll never be the TV ratings like there was with Tiger. And I would respectfully disagree with that, because when somebody wins, and if they win at a high clip, and if they're always right there, people are going to come to watch. I said that this Open Championship, and I know there were other guys involved that made it this way, was the most entertaining major championship that I've seen since Tiger was dominating in the early 2000s. It was as riveting as I have seen. And for Jordan Spieth to be able to, at 21 years old, to roll in a 50-foot putt on 16, that was very Tiger-esque. That's the kind of thing that Tiger used to do. And I think that he will be able to keep the tour elevated, even if Tiger Woods never gets back to the point that he was before. Jordan Spieth, at such a young age, if he's not winning majors, he's right there. If he's not winning every tournament, he's right there. And he's figuring out a way to get it done. And for any great champion, as fans, that's all we want. That's all we wanted out of Tiger Woods. That's all we want out of Jordan Spieth. I think he is fantastic for the sport. He's hungry. He's determined. He's a gentleman on top of everything else. I think that's the biggest difference between Tiger and Jordan Spieth, is that everybody loves Jordan Spieth. Tiger kept everybody at an arm's length, and he didn't have a lot of close friends back when he was dominating. I think Jordan Spieth has figured out how to win, and he's just a really good kid. And I think that's a deadly combination. But I think he wants to win worse than anybody on tour, and I think he's got incredible talent and a flair for the dramatic, and I can't wait to see what he does going forward.
I'm very high on the kid as well, and I don't follow all the PGA events. I follow the majors quite a bit, but for Jordan Spieth, it was like I couldn't stop following the Open yesterday, and even though it was fantastic and it went to a 4-hole playoff with 3 guys, the fact that he missed out on one stroke, I found myself let down, God, I wanted to see him in it. I hate to say I was disappointed by a playoff because I wasn't, but that was kind of the power and the appeal he had for me, just kind of a casual golf fan. He's already done it, and man, I really wish he could have got it. But credit to Zach Johnson, a fantastic performance.
The exact same thing this morning. In fact, yesterday when he missed the putt on 18, I started doing work, sending emails, watching something on DVR.
Yeah, you started responding to my DMs in your Twitter profile. I was like, let me see if I can catch him during the open.
At that point, with all due respect to Zach Johnson and Mark Leishman and Louis Oosthuizen, I really didn't care who won at that point. It wasn't going to change my life like it would have if Jordan Spieth had won. I was heartbroken for the kid, and he's the last person that you need to feel sorry for.
Right.
Because he's he's making tens of millions of dollars, 21 years old, he's single, traveling. I mean, his life is as good as it gets. But I felt sorry for him because I feel like he's going to attack history, just like Tiger attacked history. And it was an opportunity to get to 3, and you've got to get to 3 before you can get to 10. You know what I'm saying? So that was you're not going to compete, and you're not going to be there every single time. And I'm like you. I felt disappointed for him and the fact that he was unable to get it done.
Jonathan Coachman, our guest. Hey, give a follow on Twitter @TheCoachESPN. Simple handle for you. I want to talk a little NBA free agency with you, Coach. I always find it fun. I mean, like that first couple days of free agency, at least, the moratorium, I just can't swipe. I can't stop swiping down on and refreshing my Twitter page because it's one thing after another. What to you was the biggest surprise this year in NBA free agency?
I guess my biggest surprise was the fact that so many average players were getting above average contracts, at least financially. And a lot of people, I guess, including myself, still have a hard time wrapping our heads around the fact that there's going to be so much more money to be had next year. I mean, your guy, Anthony Davis, who is arguably the second best player in the league.
You already answered my next question I was going to ask you, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, he got a contract that's going to average $30 million a year, which wasn't even possible with the old salary cap. And I just think when you've got, average players making $10 million a year, you can see where it's going to go. I also was surprised that so many people were so high on. I like DeAndre Jordan, but the bottom line is, if you're going to sell me a bill of goods, DeAndre Jordan is going to score 20 for you every single night, and then also get you 15 to 17 rebounds. That's just not going to happen. At first he needs to understand what his abilities are, and he's never going to be a guy that you run plays for. But yet that's what he wanted, and that's what Dallas told him they were going to do. I think what ultimately pulled the trigger on him going back to L.A. was Doc Rivers as somebody finally being honest with him and saying, that's not who you are. You can still make $22 million a year with us and be who you are and not have the pressure of having to score with a minute and a half to go because you can't hit free throws and we can't give you the basketball. And I think those were two of my biggest surprises the market.
Jonathan Coachman, our guest, ESPN 1420, ESPN1420.com. Well, I guess you already answered the question, Coach, but where do you rank Pelican superstar Anthony Davis right now, today, July 21st, 2015, on the list of best players in the world?
I never would have thought when he left Kentucky that he would be able to take his game to the level that it is now, to where if you leave him open for 15 to 18 feet, he's going to knock that down 50% of the time. And he's actually become a guy who plays with a certain amount of disdain for the opposition, which even if you're a gentleman away from the court, I believe to be a superstar player, you have to have that on the court. And I feel like he's understanding that, and he's realizing that, and he's also embracing the fact that he now has to be the guy that gets on the bus first, drives it, and tells everybody, get on with me, I'll get you to where we need to go. I think the next 5 to 8 years could really be special if other players, and they put enough good players around him, because I think he's undoubtedly a Hall of Fame talent. And if he continues to get better, I think the Pelicans will definitely be a threat in the West.
So you rank him about second behind LeBron, or do you feel like, hey, let's wait about another 3 or 4 years before I put him right there?
I think he's top 5. I mean, I think he's top 5. He still has, for me, too many off games. You know what I'm saying? He's not a guy. I mean, certainly on any given night he can score 40. We've seen that. But I want him to score 25 to 28 with his talent at 6'11". I want to see that every night. He's got, the great thing about Jordan and Kobe and these guys is that even when you're playing in Minnesota on a Monday, they were still going to bring it. And I think that's where some of the players, including Anthony Davis, sometimes make a misstep, is that they're like, it's not national TV. It's not a Thursday night on TNT. It's not Sunday afternoon on ABC. You've got to bring it 82 nights a year if you want us to look at you as if you are the second or third best player in the game. And I think that's where he still needs to get to.
I think, your bosses at ESPN and the guys at Turner Sports starting to catch on. I mean, they're not putting him on national TV much. I think that's about to end. They haven't released the national schedule for next year, but the Pels, it was the Hornets, then the Pelicans, haven't been on national TV much, but as somebody that's watched every one of their games the last couple of years, I mean, what he did last season what's scary, I think, to the rest of the NBA is that's not even close to the ceiling for this kid, Coach. The bass he's put on, and you attributed him kind of being that first guy on the bus. First time, granted, he's only 22, and it took till his third year in the league, but it was the first time you heard him after games saying, it's on me. I got to get these guys together. I got to do this. I got to do that. And I think that's normal for, look, you're 19, 20 years old. You come into the league. You're still trying to, get your feet under you. But he's past that. And I think, he's one of the better interviews we've ever had on this show. So he's kind of bubbly. He's funny. He likes to kind of laugh off the court. But he doesn't get enough credit for his intensity and hatred of losing on the court. And I'm glad you pointed that out about him because, look, man, there's nothing the guy hates more in the world than losing. And anybody that thought, oh, well, he's just going to jump ship or sign the short 3-year deal, they haven't paid attention to what he's done since he's been in the league and the things he said. He's got the right personality off the court to kind of fit in down here in South Louisiana and particularly in New Orleans, but the perfect personality on the court. And I just hope that all the fans of that franchise realize what they have there because it's not too often you can draft a player that special. And the Pelicans, as long as he stays healthy, like you said, they got a future Hall of Famer for many years to come.
And Scott, fans need to understand that when you've got a franchise player, not only is Anthony Davis going to start to act differently because he understands he's locked in. There's no way in a million years they would ever trade him. And he is the guy. He is the centerpiece. He's the highest paid player in the league. To be honest, I mean, LeBron's going to get there, but he's the highest paid guy per year in the league right now. And fans cannot ever, if he takes a step back or if he has some bad games, they've got to deliver just like he's going to deliver. And I think that's where other fan bases have really gotten it, whether it was the Bulls in the 90s, the Lakers in the 2000s, is that everybody brought it to the table. And fans can really help a player like Anthony Davis to play even better because when you feel that love and you feel that confidence behind you as the leader of a town, of a city, of a franchise, that can really change how a player plays.
And he's the guy that can do it. It's a football-first city as somebody that's lived there and family from there, but the Pelicans continue to be on the rise, and with a player that special, basketball can be just as big there. And speaking of football, though, Coach, training camp gets underway next week. Just out of curiosity, I know it's early in July, but you have any favorites you think for the Super Bowl this year?
It's so funny because when you do SportsCenter, the way that I've had to, you almost have to plan out your year is I'm always preaching to our new anchors, too, that knowledge is power. And the more knowledge you have, the better you're going to be as an anchor. And it's also difficult when the sports start to bleed over. When one's playing and the other one comes on, and then you got 2 or 3 at the same time. And I told myself, I said, I won't seriously start thinking about football because you can really lose yourself in it at ESPN if you start thinking about football in early July. Because now you made yourself a 12-month-a-year fan, and Now all of a sudden, basketball, baseball, these other sports, you're like, wow, I'm going to drive myself crazy. With that being said, I'm already hungry for it, and I'm already ready for it. And I'm a diehard Chiefs fan, and I don't care what any of my bosses say, that we're fans first, and the whole reason we do our jobs is to be a fan. And I'm always going to think my team is going to be good. In my lifetime, they haven't been good, but for a couple of years. With that being said, I don't know anybody in the AFC. I really don't. That, in my mind, is going to challenge the New England Patriots. Even though they've lost some players, if you're telling me I've got to pick the Colts or the Broncos with a less than 100% Peyton Manning, or the Chargers, or you give me another team. So many people are saying Miami. I'm going to take the Patriots every single time until Tom Brady gives me a reason not to. Until Rob Gronkowski gives me a reason not to. Now, the flip side, I think the NFC's got a ton of teams that could be good. I don't know if your fan base has gotten over the trading of Jimmy Graham, but I was shocked. And I know Drew Brees was shocked. And I know there's money issues on every team. But when you're trading, to me, the first or second best tight end in football, and you're trading them to a team that's been to the Super Bowl for 2 straight years, that's just dumb front office work if you're asking me. The Saints have to go through the Seahawks to get to the Super Bowl, and you're giving them your best player. I look at it from afar. How are you guys looking at it?
Well, I think, look, shock, certainly that was the case when it happened. And there's some, how it is. There's some fans, no matter what, they're going to support the team and say, oh, well, he was overrated. Of course, they all loved him when he was here. But I think objectively, the trade was more about 7 and 9 than anything else. Mickey Loomis has signed a lot of contracts as the GM with the Saints, and a lot of them are backloaded. And, you kind of bank on the cap growing a little bit. You have to make sacrifices. And I think long-term, they're thinking 3-4 years from now when they're going to be in cap hell. Short-term, they got a center. They got a first-round pick, a guy they feel like can start at linebacker for a while. And I think, again, more than anything, Coach, I think it was just about 7 and 9, and they feel like offensively they can still get some things done. Yes, make no mistake about it, they're going to miss him. And I remind folks of that quite a bit. But it was, look, we've kind of tried this thing the last 2 years, and we got off to a hot start in 2013, so we have to make changes, and unfortunately, it's got to be somewhere where we've invested a lot of money.
Send him to San Diego.
Right.
Send him to the one team that has been to the Super Bowl 2 years in a row in the NFC. To me, it's more about that than it is about sending him out of town. It happens all the time. You send a big-name player to someplace else. But now you've given to me, Seattle's one weakness on offense was pass receivers. And now you're giving them an all-pro tight end who probably is going to be rejuvenated because he's like, wait a second, I'm making $10 million a year, and you ship me out of town? I'm going to show you and help this team go to 3 straight Super Bowls. That, to me, was what shocked me, is who they sent him to, not the fact that they sent him somewhere.
And he always plays with a chip on his shoulder. He's going to have a big one. And, no doubt, Coach. If they end up meeting in the postseason, that's going to be storyline number 1. Storyline, I don't know, number 4 might be Brandon Browner, a former Seahawk and Patriot who's won the last 2 Super Bowls. Just signed a 3-year, $15 million deal with the Saints. Now, Coach, Jonathan Coachman, our guest, ESPN1420.com, you know as well as anybody, as you were on the airwaves here in Lafayette, Louisiana, that sometimes a quote can be taken out of context. Having said that, Brandon Browner is playing at a charity softball game in Seattle with his old Legions of Boom buddies, and I get that you're trying to play to the crowd, but you just signed a 3-year, $15 million deal. I don't think you should, before you even play a snap for that team, go to your old team and say, yeah, man, as soon as I finish in New Orleans, I can't wait to come back here. Like, again, some things can be taken out of context, but I don't care that you're playing to a crowd. You can't say it. Like, can you imagine if, okay, Coach, you sign with ESPN and you're like, man, hey, WWE, once this contract runs out, I can't wait to go back to you. You just can't do that.
I don't even know how that could be taken out of context. I was shocked when I read it, and it would completely rub me the wrong way, because on a lot of levels, I have said this about if Des Bryant wouldn't have got his deal done. You don't ever want to think that a player is not playing to their full potential because of money or because they're not happy where they are, or they went someplace just because of the money and because their team wouldn't pay them. But I would never want to accuse Browner of, if you played against the Seahawks, somehow not playing hard enough, and it may sound like a stretch, but if you're playing head up and you know he's got plenty of love for the other team, and in fact he may want to go back there and play someday, how is he going to play that particular game? Or how hard is he going to play in New Orleans, where he understands he wants to be healthy in 3 years so he can finish his career as a starter in Seattle? Those things start to creep into your mind when you hear a statement like that. So yeah, it would bother me big time if I paid a guy $5 million a year to come play for me, and I heard him say that he wants to go back to the team he just came from. Yeah, that would be an issue for me as a fan.
Jonathan Coachman, our guest, great stuff. ESPN SportsCenter anchor, radio personality from time to time, and former WWE personality. So, Coach, we got about 10 left with you, and got to ask you a little bit about some old WWE memories right here on the Great Scott Show, ESPN1420.com. A few years ago, you were sitting in with Ryan Russillo. I think SVP was on vacation, and he was asking you some old WWE stories. I vaguely recall, I don't remember all the details, but I recall you discussing a time that The Undertaker sort of told you, this wasn't, on Raw or anything. This is just, off the screen, right? He told you it was time to have a drink with him. And the way you kind of explained it was, once he sort of accepted you and said, I've kind of got my eye on you and watching the work you do, you kind of felt like you were in. My memory's a little vague on it. Can you rehash that story for us a little bit?
Well, if I do, my stomach might get a little bit upset, because it was still to this day, and God willing, as the rest of my life goes, the drunkest I have ever been in my life. Nothing to do with it. It just so happened, to make the story very quick, it just so happened that after 9/11, back in 2001, all of our schedule got pushed back a week. So we happened to be, the sports schedule got pushed back a week. So remember, the Super Bowl was a week later.
Right.
And so we happened to be in Vegas for the Super Bowl. And the guys were in Reno for a house show that afternoon, and they were flying in that night the next day. So we were at the Embassy Suites across from the Hard Rock in Vegas, and we started drinking early because, it's West Coast time. So I had been drinking for 6 or 7 hours for the Super Bowl, and then the guys walked into the hotel. So the Undertaker comes over to me and says, "Today's the day." And I'm thinking, I've just been drinking Coronas and Bloody Marys, and today cannot be the day for what you're about to do. And the Undertaker's big thing was Jack Daniels. And so what he would do when he did his old acceptance thing is you'd go over by yourself, sit at a table, a waitress would bring over like 20 shots, and he would give you the come to Jesus, and then when he decided for you to take a shot, you take it.
Good God, Coach.
We're not talking, this is not 3 or 4 hours. This is probably 20 or 30 minutes.
Oh, my God.
That you're taking 10 shots of Jack Daniels each. For him, it was like water. For me, it was like poison. And the next thing I remember is getting up the next morning. This was like 7 o'clock at night. I mean, it's not late. And somebody helped me to my room. Again, I was not a huge drinker back then. I'm not now either. And I get up the next morning, and it was an absolute mess for the entire day. I, face planted into a wall in my room. Thought it might be cool to eat breakfast before I went to the show. That was a huge mistake, because when I pulled into the parking lot at the arena in Vegas, there's hundreds of fans outside the fence. I proceeded to lose my breakfast right in front of all of them. And then at some point, somebody told me that the Big Show was looking for me because I had slapped him 3 times on the chest the night before.
Oh, God.
He showed up, too, and I don't remember doing that. And Big Show was looking for me all day because he felt like he had been disrespected, and he wanted to slap me 3 times with an overhead chop, which is kind of his signature thing. So I hid out in a bus the entire day until I had to do what I had to do for the show that night. So it was the longest 24 hours of my life, no question. But I was accepted after that. So if that's what I had to go through, so be it.
By the way, the Patriots beat the Rams in that Super Bowl at the Superdome that year. You didn't see any of it because you don't
No,
remember any of it.
I actually want. You know those square things. You buy a square with the numbers on.
Right, yeah.
Right. So I had 7 and 4. So I actually won several $100s on one of those square things with that winning field goal. So I remember that too. But again, the game was over before I did the Jack Daniels.
I got you on the West Coast. Oh, boy. Jonathan Coachman, our guest. Fantastic stuff. Hey, speaking of Taker, he's 50 years old, and last night he's brawling with Brock Lesnar. Coach, I'm in my 30s. You're in your early 40s. You seem like you stayed in shape, but, my God, how is this guy doing it at 50?
Because he's protected himself over the years. He's only doing it once or twice a year, and you can get yourself ready for a couple of times a year. Plus, his nickname is more than just a nickname. He's the Phenom. I mean, he's one of the greatest WWE superstars of all time, and that's just not about what he does in the ring. It's about everything that he is, and he's one of the guys I have the utmost respect for. And the fact that he's still doing it after all the hip problems he's had and the back problems that he's had, because once you get to that age, which, 50 is not that old anymore, not 2015, but it is if you're still wrestling. So, it really is like 40 is the new 30, 50 is the new 40, So, the fact that he still wants to do it, it never leaves your blood. I would love to go back and be a character on Monday Night Raw and still do SportsCenter the other 6 days of the week. That would be my dream schedule, is to do both. And God willing, one day both places see fit to do that, because I really miss performing, but I don't want to do it. I would never do it full-time again because I love ESPN too much.
And the schedule for WWE full-time is, some of those guys, these cats are on the road weeks at a time. It's nonstop. And, you got
brutal.
2 little ones at home, and I'm sure that the one thing, obviously you miss the performing in the WWE, but you don't miss that travel schedule, right?
Well, no. I would just do it 1 day a week. You can, if you're just flying out and back 1 day a week, that's not nearly as bad as, when I was a character and I got in the ring in 2003, I was doing shows Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and home on Tuesday, and still doing TV shows when I got back to the studio that we would send all over the world. So when you're traveling, we had to have a minimum of 175 to 200 miles in between shows so that you wouldn't overlap with fans going to both shows to maximize ticket sales. You're driving 800 miles a week, 600 to 800 miles a week in a rental car. So you better have somebody you like traveling with, and you better stay healthy and try not to do too much stupid stuff, because it was brutal. And that was every week of the year. The only week we had off was the week prior to Christmas. But then we'd go on the road right after Christmas for about 5 house shows during the week, because people were off school and they could come on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday or a Thursday. So it was literally year round. It was brutal. It still is. They haven't changed the schedule.
Who was your travel buddy?
The best 3 years I had was when I was with Christian and the Hurricane. Those 2 guys became like brothers to me, and it was absolutely some of the most fun I've ever had in my life. Those guys were fantastic. We had a ball. We like to do a lot of the same things. We like to travel the same way, and we just laughed and laughed and laughed, and it's never been replaced like those 2 guys. They were fantastic. And to this day, they're still 2 good friends of mine.
Jonathan Coachman, our guest. A few more minutes with him. What's the worst bump you ever took in WWE?
The worst I ever took? Well, I've taken everybody's finisher at one point or another. I'm proud to say that there's not a big-time guy out there that I haven't taken his finish. Some of them are scarier than others. Probably the worst bump I ever took was never seen on TV or in front of a crowd. We were in Steubenville, Ohio, and we're backstage. And those old school, like junior high locker rooms where there's like a cement going down the ceiling, maybe a foot and a half wide, and then
Sure.
you've got the coach's office at the end of it.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those type of locker rooms, and Batista and Triple H were dressing in there. So I went into Dave Batista, And I said, hey, listen, you and I are on right after intermission, and we were going to do a little thing where he came out and beat me up, and the crowd would love it. I said, let's practice the move, which was me, kind of pushing off his shoulder, and he'd throw me straight up and catch me and then reverse me with a slam. And we didn't look up, or at least I didn't.
Oh, God.
That slab that was going down maybe a foot and a half or 2 feet above our head, and he literally posted me straight up into it so hard that the skin off the top of my bald head was left on the cement block. And I was completely knocked out. They had to take me to the emergency room. I had a concussion. I was unable to perform the rest of the weekend. Triple H just had me walking around the corner when it happened, and he said, to this day, that it's the funniest thing he's ever seen.
That's just...
and apparently I just crumbled into just a pile of goo, and I was completely knocked out for probably 30 or 45 seconds before they started working on me and getting me to the hospital.
Well,
that's probably the worst one I've ever took.
Worst headache, when you woke up for that or when you woke up after drinking Jack Daniels with The Undertaker?
Probably Vegas, to be honest with you.
Wow. Coach, I've only got two more for you, my friend. Last one on wrestling. Being that it kind of ties into ESPN. Being that Brock Lesnar announced when he was re-signing with the WWE, he did it on SportsCenter, and the WrestleMania main event was covered on SportsCenter, and there wasn't, not as a joke. It was just, hey, this happened, Seth Rollins. Do you feel ESPN is leaning closer to that marketplace? Maybe not, in terms of, hey, on SportsCenter we're going to show a bunch of Raw highlights, but maybe sort of a specialized weekly show or something more oriented to that fan base, because I don't know if they know this, but they got a guy named Jonathan Coachman who knows a thing or two about that world.
Well, I certainly hope so, because we talk about it a lot, and behind the scenes I've been pushing really hard for it. Tonight at 6 o'clock on SportsCenter, the My Wish is with John Cena, and we just recently did an entire E60 on WWE NXT. So I think what I've been pushing, and it has a lot to do with me feeling more comfortable and confident in my role at ESPN, is that bosses at ESPN are smart, and they will listen. And it's about eyeballs and revenue. And what's the best way to get new eyeballs? It's not kids that are growing up and all of a sudden they're watching sports. It's about, let's go to a fan base that may not necessarily be watching what our product is, but if we bring in a new product, they'll watch that. Well, WWE fans are very, very loyal, and they will follow their stars to wherever they are. And if that means they're on SportsCenter, they will watch SportsCenter. So the last time I checked, Raw still had 3 to 5 million viewers a week. And I think our bosses are realizing we can't just focus on journalistic integrity to hide behind anymore. The E in ESPN should stand for entertainment, however that entertainment is. And we've bought all into the UFC. To me, there's no reason why we shouldn't buy all in to the WWE. And it's not like you said. It's not about covering it every single Monday night as if there's highlights as if we didn't know what's going to happen. It's about following it as a show and doing the big events, just like we do UFC. And I've said this, if we're going to take SportsCenter on the road and we can do cornhole and horseshoes, then by God, we can certainly do SummerSlam in New York City. And so I'm hoping that if I keep pushing hard enough, that they'll start, covering it more and more and more, just from an entertainment aspect. And I think that's what we're trying to get to. And they just haven't completely gone all in. And because I think they're still a little bit scared of presenting it as, hey, we're in bed with WWE. But gosh darn it, there's millions of viewers there to be had. And I think we're just about ready to do that. I hope so.
Great stuff, Coach. Last question. I know I've kept you for a while. Got to let you run in a minute so you can pick up your kids from camp. But your favorite athlete of all time?
Well, I always say in threes, and I have three favorite athletes. But if I'm being honest with myself, I base my favorite athlete off of how many great days has he given me as a sports fan. And to me, there is nothing better in life other than my kids and family than sports. It's how I make my living. It's what I love. There's nothing that I enjoy more than still playing sports. And to me, there's nobody out there, as much as he's struggling right now, and even if he never gets back to where he was, nobody has given me more great days and more great hours of sports in my life than Tiger Woods. And it's not close. When I think of all the great moments and memories he had for a game that I love to still play, and hopefully I'll play until I'm 80 years old, and the things that he was able to do with a golf club, with a golf ball, is second to none. And I'm really good friends with his caddy, and I play golf with his caddy, Joe LaCava, all the time. And it kills me to see somebody. It's like watching Michael Jordan not be able to hit a jump shot anymore. It's just something you don't want to see, and you hope that he can get back and compete with the stars of today. But like I said, even if he doesn't, he still will have done more than his fair share for his sport, and getting the money to almost quadruple from when he started to where it is today as far as prize money is concerned. And he can go to bed feeling pretty good about that every single night, as hard as it is for him to be where he is right now, because none of us, or very, very few of us, understand what true greatness is all about. And Tiger Woods certainly knows what being great and being as good as it gets is truly all about. And that's the reason that he'll always be my favorite athlete.
Jonathan Coachman has given us plenty of time. I think we need to make it like a summer ritual. Like every summer, we just have an afternoon where I just talk to the coach about all things sports and a couple WWE memories. You game?
That sounds good to me, man. You know, I'm always here for you whenever you want. So that's good. I really don't want to talk to you more than every 12 months anyway.
Dude, I mean, I'm sick of you already. Former WWE personality, great guy, ESPN SportsCenter anchor. You'll hear him on the radio as well on these airwaves from time to time. Give him a follow on Twitter @thecoachespn. Great stuff, Jonathan. We appreciate it, my friend. And maybe once the kids are kind of grown up, and I know that's a ways away and maybe off in college, at some point, many years from now, we got to give you the key to the city down here. Just give you the whole cage and everything. Just gonna lay out the red carpet for you.
You need to talk to your whoever at your college and book me for a speaking engagement. I can come down. I can talk to the communications class. We can talk to the TV class. We can make a whole day of it, and then I could justify my trip by making it sort of business too.
I'm on it. I look forward to it. Coach, man, thanks for the time, my friend, and hug those kids tight, and just all the best to your family, and we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you again next year, but we'll be watching and listening to you every single day.
You got it, Scotty. Thanks, man. Good luck on your show too, man. I appreciate you having me on.
You got it. Jonathan Coachman has been our guest right here on ESPN 1420 and .com.